Chuck Norris became a huge Hollywood star and a martial arts legend. His famous fight with Bruce Lee in the movie Way of the Dragon is still considered one of the best fight scenes ever made. But while Norris was becoming famous on screen, his personal life was a total mess. His first marriage to Diane Holchick was really complicated and messy, and the drama didn't stop there. Now at 83 years old, Norris's ex-wife is finally telling the truth about their marriage and about him. Everyone wants to know why she's speaking up now, and what exactly did she say about the man behind the famous image. Stay tuned because what she shared might completely change how you see Chuck Norris. The hidden story of Chuck Norris from fighter to Hollywood legend. Chuck Norris's life didn't start with the super tough guy image that made him a Hollywood icon. Actually, his story began in a small town in Oklahoma, where things were really hard. He was born on March 10, 1940, in Ryan, Oklahoma, to parents Wilma Lee and Ray D. Norris. Chuck was born into a family that had both strength and serious problems. His father was a World War II Army veteran who worked as a mechanic, bus driver, and truck driver, but he also had a drinking problem. His mother, Wilma, who was Irish, tried her best to keep the family together, while Ray, who had German, British, and some Cherokee background, wasn't always around. From the beginning, Chuck wasn't the fearless warrior people think of today. He was shy, had low confidence, and was just average in school. He said he was a kid who just blended into the background, feeling embarrassed about his father's drinking and the family's money problems. Being shy and quiet wasn't just a temporary thing, it shaped most of his childhood. When his parents got divorced when he was 16, Chuck was already used to being let down. He moved with his mother and brothers to Prairie Village, Kansas, and later to Torrance, California, where life still didn't give him much direction. But sometimes life puts people in situations that change them completely. For Chuck, that big turning point came when he joined the United States Air Force in 1958. He was sent to Osan Air Base in South Korea, where he worked as an air policeman. And it was here that a totally new version of Chuck started to appear. Being surrounded by martial arts culture, he began training in Tang Soo Do. He didn't just try it out, he threw himself completely into it. And while in Korea, he got the nickname Chuck, a name that would soon replace Carlos Ray Norris, his birth name. When he came back to the United States, he kept serving at March Air Force Base in California. But his real passion was changing, but martial arts had sparked something deep inside him. When he left the Air Force in 1962 with the rank of Airman First Class, he wasn't just a veteran anymore. He was a man going after a completely new identity. While waiting for a job opening as a Torrance police officer, Chuck took a big risk and opened his first martial arts studio. At first, it was just about surviving, but it quickly became his career. Of course, Chuck didn't start winning right away. In his early days competing in karate tournaments, he got knocked down way more times than he won. He lost fights to Joe Louis, Alan Stain, and Tony Tull. In 1968, he faced what everyone thought would be his final crushing defeat, his 10th career loss against Luis Delgado. But that loss became his motivation to get better. Later that same year, he came back much stronger and beat Delgado in revenge, winning the professional middleweight karate champion title. From that moment on, he kept that title for 6 years in a row, proving he was one of the best fighters of his time. By 1967, Chuck was winning tournaments everywhere. Wins over fighters like Vic Moore gave him momentum. He became champion at the All-American Karate Championship at Madison Square Garden, which was a huge step in his career. Over time, his reputation wasn't just about winning titles. It was about his fighting style, his presence, and his ability to bounce back after losing. In 1969, he was at the top, defending his titles at the International Karate Championship, winning lots of fights and earning the Fighter of the Year award from Black Belt magazine. He was no longer the shy kid from Oklahoma. He was now someone people knew in the martial arts world. And while winning tournaments built his career, they also opened new doors for him. One of those doors led to Bruce Lee. The two met when Lee was still becoming famous on the TV show Green Hornet. Their friendship turned into working together professionally and eventually became one of the most famous on-screen fights in movie history. In the 1972 movie, The Way of the Dragon, Chuck played Bruce Lee's opponent in a scene that would become legendary in film history. The movie didn't just break records in Hong Kong, it made an estimated $130 million worldwide and helped launch Chuck Norris toward international fame. But Chuck wasn't happy just being Bruce Lee's opponent. He wanted to create his own type of action hero. With support from his student and friend Steve McQueen, he started taking acting classes at MGM in the mid-1970s. He turned down easy martial arts roles because he wanted characters with better stories. His first starring role came in 1977's Breaker, a cheap film that surprisingly did well at movie theaters. The success continued into 1978 with Good Guys Were Black. Nobody wanted to distribute it, so Chuck and his team rented theaters and showed it themselves. Against all odds, the film made over $18 million on just a $1 million budget. That risk really paid off. It wasn't just a box office success, it was the movie that made Chuck America's first homegrown martial arts star. After that, the hit movies kept coming. A Force of One in 1979, The Octagon in 1980, and An Eye for an Eye in 1981 made him a bankable action hero. By the early 1980s, big studios like Columbia, MGM, and Orion were competing to cast him in movies like Silent Rage, Forced Vengeance, and Lone Wolf McQuade. And then he signed a deal with Cannon Films, where he starred in the Missing in Action trilogy, making him one of the biggest action stars of the decade. What made Chuck different from other martial arts stars back then was his clearly American style. His movies weren't just about kicks and punches, they included themes connected to American politics, identity, and justice. That formula really connected with audiences, especially during the Cold War years when people wanted heroes who stood strong against enemies. But Norris wasn't only about action scenes and box office success. Over the years, he expanded what he did, writing books about martial arts, fitness, philosophy, Christianity, politics, and even Western fiction novels. He became a New York Times best-selling author, proving he could get attention not just with his fighting skills, but also with his writing. From a shy, quiet boy in Oklahoma to one of Hollywood's biggest stars, Chuck Norris's journey is truly amazing. And as much as audiences remember him as the tough guy on screen, the truth is, Chuck Norris built his success not by being perfect, but by refusing to give up when life tried to knock him down. Inside Chuck Norris's love life, the women who won the action star's heart. When people think of Chuck Norris, they picture the unstoppable action star, the martial arts legend who dominated movies in the 1970s and 1980s. But what most fans forget is that behind the fight scenes and fame, there's a completely different story. One about love, betrayal, strength, and two very different women who were part of his life. One of them supported him long before the world knew his name, and the other became his partner after he was already an international superstar. And together, their stories show a side of Chuck Norris most fans never see. Long before Chuck was famous, there was Diane Holchik. Diane was born Diane K. Holchik on November 27, 1941 in Los Angeles, California. Unlike Chuck, who grew up shy and quiet in Oklahoma, not much is known about Diane's early life. There's very little information about her parents or her childhood. But what we do know is that she went to Torrance High School in the 1950s. That's where destiny brought them together, because Torrance High wasn't just where Diane went to school. It was where she met a young Carlos Ray Norris long before he became Chuck. They were just teenagers when their romance started, and by the time Chuck joined the Air Force in 1958, the two were already dating. While he was stationed in South Korea, working as an air policeman, Chuck wrote letters to her from overseas, sharing his feelings, and in one of those letters, he proposed to her. Just imagine that. Halfway around the world, with his future still uncertain, Chuck knew he wanted Diane to be his wife. That December, barely out of high school, the two got married in Torrance. Chuck was 18 years old. Diane was just 17. He wore his Air Force uniform for their wedding. And after the ceremony, the young couple took a small 4-day honeymoon in Big Bear, California. They weren't rich, they weren't famous, they were just two kids in love, beginning their lives together. By 1962, Chuck's Air Force service had ended, and the couple had their first child, Michael R. Norris, on October 4th, 2 years later. In May 1964, their second son, Eric, was born. From the outside, they seemed like a perfect, growing, happy family. But behind closed doors, things were much more complicated. That same year, 1962, Chuck had cheated on her. His affair resulted in a child born outside of his marriage, something that would haunt his relationship with Diane. Still, she stayed with him. The betrayal left a dark shadow over them, but the couple kept going. Their marriage lasted for decades, surviving Chuck's tough climb in martial arts and then Hollywood. But as his fame grew, the